My boyfriend of 2 years dumped me at 3 a.m. via text saying he needed space, only for me to find out days later he secretly flew to Barcelona with his 22-year-old coworker, while still wearing the $400 watch I gifted him and even sending me Venmo requests for gas and coffee money. My partner of 2 years ended our relationship via a text message at 3 a.m. on a Wednesday. His note explained he required personal space for self-discovery and that our aspirations diverged. We were, in fact, preparing to cohabit once my lease expired in August, having already browsed apartments and discussed furnishings. Just a fortnight prior to his message, I had gifted him a Tissot watch for our 2-year milestone. He wore it daily, frequently sharing pictures of it online. The day following his breakup text, I dialed his number twice, merely to provoke him. Both attempts led directly to voicemail, a truly amusing outcome. I dispatched 3 separate messages, inquiring about a conversation. A quick check of his social media revealed he had removed me from Facebook and privatized his Instagram account. A predictable maneuver from someone convinced of his own cleverness. On Thursday morning, during our coffee interlude, my colleague Yasmin presented something on her phone. "See where Trey is now," she prompted, displaying his Instagram stories. She evidently believed this was thrilling news for his girlfriend. The geographic tag indicated Barcelona, Spain. The initial story depicted a hotel room featuring 2 distinct beds and lavish linens. The next revealed a breakfast scene with 2 coffee mugs and various pastries. The third featured Trey, still sporting my anniversary watch, smiling directly at the individual capturing the image. I instantly recognized the hotel. We had saved it 6 months prior, while conceptualizing a journey we ultimately never embarked upon. The very same excursion we had meticulously explored for weeks, comparing airfare and reviewing accommodations. A trip estimated at $3,000 per person, according to our detailed financial plan. Yasmin continued scrolling to the subsequent story, still eager to share what she perceived as engaging holiday content. A young woman with fair hair and a nose piercing was tagged, Gemma. I recognized her. She was a social media coordinator at Trey's workplace, aged 22. I had encountered her at his office's December holiday celebration. The ultimate story presented them both at Park Güell, capturing selfies together. Gemma wore a summer dress I had bookmarked in my online cart but never purchased, deeming its $180 price tag excessive. Trey's arm was around her waist, mirroring the precise pose we once adopted for photographs. Yasmin observed me with anticipation, likely expecting my excitement over Trey's getaway or an inquiry about the woman. I simply replied, "Thank you for sharing," and returned to my workspace. I captured all the evidence before the 24-hour stories vanished, dispatching them to my friend Lina. "Observe this complete buffoon," my text read. Trey had indeed blocked me on Instagram, yet intentionally kept his stories visible to others. This simpleton imagined himself incredibly astute, oblivious to his own pitiable appearance. That Friday afternoon, a Venmo request from Trey appeared. It was for $47, with the note, "Gas money. Thanks." I simply erupted in laughter. He had blocked my access everywhere, save for Venmo, the platform for financial exchanges. This utter imbecile genuinely believed I would transfer funds to him while he vacationed in Spain with another woman. I immediately phoned Lina. "You won't believe this," I exclaimed. "This buffoon just solicited gas money from me while in Barcelona." Lina, too, found it utterly humorous. We both sensed he was due for a harsh dose of reality. I found myself ceaselessly refreshing their Instagram stories. This unfolding catastrophe was too captivating to miss. Each new upload surpassed the last in absurdity. They clearly felt they were experiencing their ideal life in Barcelona, while he possessed the nerve to request money from me. On Saturday evening, they shared pictures from a Barcelona rooftop eatery I recognized from our joint Pinterest board. Gemma was sporting the watch Trey typically wore on his right wrist. My watch, the one I had diligently saved for 3 months to acquire by preparing my own lunches daily. She had it circled around her wrist like an adornment, as its size was excessive for her delicate build. I found myself uncontrollably laughing at her ludicrous appearance, wearing a man's timepiece that so evidently did not suit her. Sunday night saw their return to Chicago on a late flight. Trey uploaded an image of himself at O'Hare, captioned, "Back to reality." My watch was conspicuously absent from his wrist in the photograph. Most likely, he had presented it to his new companion as some grand, original romantic gesture. On Monday morning, I continued perusing Gemma's Instagram highlights, given her profile remained entirely public. Amidst her Barcelona trip stories, one particular post brought me to an abrupt halt. She had shared a screenshot of her Venmo transaction, accompanied by text expressing the final transfer of funds for our dream trip. The image displayed $1,847 sent to Trey, labeled Barcelona Fund, with a timestamp of Tuesday, 11:23 p.m. This was a mere 4 hours before he dispatched my breakup message. I immediately captured that transaction and forwarded it to Lina, complete with crying laughing emojis. This supposed mastermind had inadvertently created a clear financial record of his entire deceitful plan. The following Thursday morning, precisely 1 week after the initial breakup text, another Venmo request arrived, this time for $23. The accompanying description stated, "Coffee run, you know you want to," featuring the identical emoji he often sent me during our relationship. Observing his smiling profile picture, where he still sported my watch, I erupted in further amusement. This individual truly believed he could utilize me as his personal cash machine following his actions. Yet, what this simpleton failed to comprehend was that I possessed the precise knowledge to compel his return, groveling. And when that imbecile inevitably did, he would profoundly regret ever crossing me. First update. Precisely 1 week after Mr. I Need Space dispatched that inadequate breakup message, I concluded the charade. This individual presumed he could simply disregard my calls and messages while simultaneously soliciting funds for fuel. It was time for a stark realization. I contacted his office directly, requesting to speak with Trey concerning a personal issue related to shared financial matters. The receptionist connected me without delay. Upon his answer, I could discern his hurried scramble for a private location. He began with an anxious chuckle, stating his unavailability for conversation due to an entire day of meetings. I pointed out the intriguing contrast, given his apparent ample time for Instagram stories and Venmo requests. The ensuing silence was profoundly satisfying. He then adopted a defensive posture, asserting our need for maturity in this separation, which implied granting each other space for emotional processing. I directly inquired about Gemma and the Barcelona excursion. He truly possessed the audacity to suggest I was fabricating scenarios and that Gemma was merely a work associate who coincidentally vacationed concurrently. When I brought up the $1,800 transaction, he fell completely silent for approximately 30 seconds. Subsequently, he asserted it was merely reimbursement for her covering his portion of team lunch expenses over several months. I burst into such uncontrollable laughter I struggled for breath. $1,800 for team lunch expenses? This man genuinely believed I was entirely naive. He persistently maintained I was drawing unsubstantiated connections and that my conduct was growing unsettling. When I inquired about my watch, he claimed he had simply forgotten he was wearing it and would return it promptly. The manner in which he uttered "forgot," as if a $400 Tissot timepiece could genuinely escape one's awareness. I informed him I expected its return by Friday, necessitating an in-person meeting to address our joint possessions. He acquiesced, but only on the condition we convene in a public venue. On Wednesday afternoon, my sister Vivian contacted me, utterly distraught. It appeared our mutual acquaintance Edgar had viewed Trey's Instagram stories and informed his girlfriend, who then relayed the information to Vivian's roommate, eventually reaching Vivian herself. "What a small world, wouldn't you say?" she remarked. Yet, here's where the plot thickened. Edgar had recounted Trey's complaints at a January work happy hour, expressing how I was financially demanding and consistently sought expensive outings. This revelation astonished me, considering I largely covered our date expenses and packed my own lunches to accumulate funds for his anniversary gift. Vivian was incandescent with rage, intent on immediately driving to his apartment for a confrontation. I had to physically restrain her from appearing at his residence because, frankly, witnessing this man orchestrate his own downfall was far more captivating than allowing my sister to dismantle him. She repeatedly asserted her lifelong dislike for him, always suspecting he exploited me, a characteristic sisterly sentiment, though not inaccurate. Thursday morning brought a text from Trey, requesting to postpone our meeting until Saturday due to an overwhelming workload. The sheer arrogance of this man, believing he could dictate the schedule after his actions. I firmly stated Friday at 6 p.m. at the coffee shop near his office, or alternatively, I'd be pleased to discuss everything publicly at his workplace. Suddenly, his calendar became entirely flexible. But wait, the situation improved further. That Thursday afternoon, while acquiring essential items at Target, I unexpectedly encountered Gemma in the cosmetics aisle. Upon seeing me, she froze, like a deer caught in headlights, and then genuinely attempted to conceal herself behind a foundation display. I approached her directly, suggesting we ought to converse, given our apparent shared experiences now. She promptly launched into apologies, claiming complete ignorance of Trey having a serious girlfriend until after their return from Barcelona. I questioned how this was plausible, given we met at the company holiday gathering in December. She asserted she believed I was merely a casual date and that Trey had informed her we had ended our relationship months ago. When I presented the screenshot of her Venmo payment to him, time-stamped 4 hours before he severed ties with me, her complexion drained. She began to prattle about Trey's weeks of anticipation for this trip and his assertion that he needed a vacation following the conclusion of a toxic relationship. Toxic relationship, indeed. This man had labeled me as toxic to his casual fling, all while sporting the watch I purchased for him and utilizing her money to finance his escape. Gemma reiterated she would never have gone had she known the truth, and that she felt profoundly remorseful. I told her she could continue to feel terrible, as her guilt held no interest for me. My concern lay with the undeniable fact that she was being manipulated as thoroughly as I was. When I inquired about the whereabouts of my watch, her discomfort intensified. Apparently, Trey had told her it was a cherished gift from his grandmother, imbued with sentimental value. This deceitful wretch had bestowed my anniversary present upon another woman, fabricating a pathetic tale about deceased relatives. The exchange lasted perhaps 10 minutes, yet I gleaned more insight from her than I had from Trey in an entire week. She mentioned his intentions to seek a promotion from his supervisor, believing that dating an office colleague would enhance his professional image. She also noted his interest in lavish apartments well beyond his financial means, and his complaints about needing to discover avenues for increased income. Upon my return to work that Friday, I at last disclosed the true events to Yasmin. She was astounded, repeatedly asserting her complete unawareness that the Barcelona stories she displayed were, in fact, evidence of infidelity. She expressed profound regret for her initial excitement at showing me Trey's vacation when he was actually with someone else. I reassured her it wasn't her fault. She couldn't have known he had just severed ties with me via text. Arriving home, I telephoned Vivian and recounted the entire narrative. She immediately began connecting various pieces of information I hadn't even considered. Trey had frequently inquired about my savings account balance and my professional advancement trajectory. He had shown considerable interest in my family's financial standing and the potential for my parents to assist with a down payment on a home. Vivian recalled that only the previous month, he had suggested I explore better compensated positions or perhaps seek a salary increase. All the pieces then began to align in the most dreadful manner imaginable. This man hadn't simply concluded he required personal space for self-discovery. He had been meticulously constructing an exit strategy, simultaneously devising a plan to elevate his overall life circumstances. The Barcelona excursion was no spur-of-the-moment romantic escape. It represented a deliberate trial run with an individual who could potentially further his career and underwrite his desired lifestyle in ways I evidently could not. Friday at last dawned, and I sat in the coffee shop, observing Trey's entrance 15 minutes behind schedule, appearing as though he preferred to be anywhere else entirely. He took a seat and instantly launched into a rehearsed discourse about our diverging desires and his belief that we would both find greater contentment with different partners. I permitted him to complete his entire soliloquy before retrieving my phone and presenting every screenshot I had amassed: the Barcelona travel images, Gemma's Venmo transaction, his Instagram stories, the complete collection. He promptly began asserting I was obsessively tracking him and infringing upon his privacy by capturing his publicly available social media content. When I introduced my discussion with Gemma, he utterly unraveled, declaring she had no authority to disclose their personal affairs to me. Then came the truly pivotal moment. I directly questioned if he had been orchestrating this for weeks. He actually attempted to manipulate my perception, suggesting I was being overly suspicious and constructing elaborate conspiracy theories. Upon my mention of Gemma's account, that he had claimed we ended months prior, he retorted she must have misconstrued things, being young and prone to dramatics. This man genuinely attributed his own falsehoods to a 22-year-old. I informed him I required my watch back instantly, to which he responded he had forgotten it at home. A remarkably convenient evasion. When I offered to wait while he retrieved it, he claimed inability, as he was due for dinner with his parents, who anticipated his arrival. I then inquired if his parents were aware of his Barcelona trip and his new romantic interest. The ensuing silence conveyed all the information I required. We debated for another 20 minutes, achieving absolutely no resolution. He continued to evade and fabricate justifications, while I steadfastly presented the evidence. Finally, I gave him until Sunday to return my watch and to determine how he would address this predicament maturely. As I departed, he actually had the audacity to ask if I intended to fulfill that Venmo request for the coffee money. That evening, while unburdening myself to Vivian about the complete fiasco, she shared a piece of information that irrevocably altered my perspective. It seemed her friend Justin was employed in HR at a company collaborating with Trey's firm. Vivian had casually discussed our predicament with Justin, who disclosed recent whispers regarding unsuitable office relationships at Trey's workplace. Nothing had been substantiated, yet the volume of corporate chatter was sufficient to draw HR's scrutiny. It suddenly struck me that Trey wasn't merely a foolish individual attempting to deceive two women simultaneously. He was, in fact, jeopardizing his entire professional future for this minor workplace dalliance. And if there's one consistent truth I've observed about men of Trey's ilk, it's their rapid descent into desperation once their career standing is imperiled. Sunday elapsed without any communication from him regarding my timepiece. Monday morning, I awoke to 3 missed calls and 2 voicemails from unfamiliar numbers. The initial message contained Trey's voice, seemingly from a friend's phone, imploring me to return his call to discuss something crucial. The subsequent voicemail, from a distinct number, also distinctly Trey, stated he possessed my watch and wished to hand it over, but required an initial explanation. The palpable urgency in his tone revealed everything necessary. Whatever scheme this man believed he was orchestrating, he was at last beginning to grasp that he wasn't the sole participant skilled in this particular game. Reddit, I suspect the charlatan is on the verge of discovering precisely what transpires when one underestimates the formidable woman. Remain attentive, for Wednesday's discussion promises to be quite enlightening. Second update. Words scarcely suffice to capture yesterday's unfolding events. You urged me to brace for the worst, and I believed I was prepared. Yet, this utter wreck of a human managed to astonish even me. Prepare your refreshments, for this narrative will be extensive. So, Wednesday finally dawned, and I remained in my vehicle outside that familiar coffee establishment, observing Trey's 10-minute anxious pacing on the pavement before I even emerged. As I approached, he immediately launched into a lengthy monologue expressing his profound gratitude for my willingness to meet and his contemplation of everything I had uttered. I interrupted him, stating my purpose was not to hear his speech of appreciation. I was there for my watch and an elucidation as to why he considered sending me Venmo requests while indulging in a European escapade to be permissible conduct. He extracted a modest jewelry box from his jacket pocket and placed it on the table separating us. The sheer presumptuousness of this man, presenting my own possession as if it were some magnanimous gift he was bestowing. He commenced an explanation, asserting the entire Barcelona scenario was intricate and that I lacked the complete context. According to Trey, Gemma had meticulously planned this vacation for months and extended an invitation to him as a friend when her original travel companion withdrew. He maintained he only consented to go because he perceived issues in our relationship and sought perspective. When I questioned his failure to disclose any of this before our breakup, he claimed he wished to spare my feelings by not revealing his uncertainties. He adamantly asserted nothing romantic transpired between them until after our official separation, which, strictly speaking, was accurate, given he waited a mere 4 hours between accepting her funds and dispatching my breakup text. When I raised the matter of the watch, he grew defensive, stating Gemma had admired it during their journey, and he had temporarily allowed her to wear it because she had forgotten her own jewelry. He insisted he never intended for her to retain it and retrieved it promptly upon realizing my displeasure. I directly asked why he had informed Gemma we had broken up months prior and referred to me as his toxic ex. His face flushed crimson, and he began stammering that Gemma must have misconstrued something he said. He attempted to persuade me he would never speak ill of me to anyone, especially not a colleague. When I mentioned possessing direct quotations from Gemma regarding their conversations, he grew agitated, suggesting she was likely attempting to stir discord between us. With every fact I presented, he produced an elaborate justification, technically not impossible, but unequivocally specious. He continually maintained his affection for me and that he never intended for events to unfold in this manner. When I inquired why he sought money from me if his affection was so profound, he actually asserted the Venmo requests were his method of maintaining contact, as he missed our discussions. At that moment, a realization dawned on me, and I began recalling every instance over the preceding 6 months where Trey had solicited money from me. There was the $800 for urgent car repairs, supposedly unable to await his next paycheck. The $450 for his share of a friend's bachelor party, attributed to delayed salary from payroll issues. The $320 for crucial dental work, which his insurance wouldn't cover until the new policy year, and the $600 to assist his parents with their mortgage, during a period his father was allegedly between jobs. Each single time, he presented a perfectly plausible justification for needing immediate cash, unable to wait for his own earnings. And each single time, I had believed him, transferring funds without a second thought, because that is what one does for a loved and trusted partner. I had never once requested verification of these expenditures, nor questioned why his financial crises invariably aligned with my paydays. I directly asked him the total sum I had provided him over the past year, observing his visible discomfort, a first in our conversation. He then asserted these were loans, always intending to repay me once his financial circumstances stabilized. When I highlighted his complete absence of any mention of repayment schedules or acknowledgement of these amounts as debts, he contended he assumed I understood he would eventually take care of it. But here is where the narrative became truly disturbing. During my discussion with Gemma at Target, she had recounted Trey's extraordinary generosity during their Barcelona trip, insisting on covering all expenses despite her offers to share costs. She also mentioned his purchase of lavish gifts for her parents during their family visit the weekend before the trip, including a $400 bottle of wine for her father and a designer handbag for her mother. I mentally calculated, realizing that over the last 6 months, I had given Trey nearly $3,000 for various emergencies and expenditures. Money he never returned or even referenced again after receiving it. Funds he had seemingly been using to finance his lifestyle and impress others, all while conveying to me he was in financial distress. When I raised this point, he immediately became defensive, asserting I was attempting to portray normal relationship support as malicious. He argued that couples aid each other financially, and it was trivial to meticulously track every dollar. He insisted he would have reciprocated if our situations were reversed, and that my emphasis on money made him uneasy. I informed him that what truly made me uneasy was the recognition that he had been fabricating financial emergencies to extract funds from me, while simultaneously underwriting romantic gestures for another woman. He tried to dispute any overlap in the timelines, but I reminded him that Gemma's parents had received their extravagant gifts the very same week he had requested money from me for dental work. He then accused me of being vindictive and attempting to destroy his life over what he termed misunderstandings about money. I countered that there was nothing misunderstood about him soliciting cash for fictitious emergencies while planning a romantic escapade financed by his coworker. He claimed I was fixating on minor details rather than appreciating the broader context, which was that our relationship faced challenges, and we both needed individual space to process matters. When I inquired about the problems he alluded to, given he had never previously raised any concerns with me, he commenced enumerating grievances I had never encountered. Apparently, I was excessively controlling for favoring advanced planning. I was too costly for occasionally enjoying upscale dining. I was overly committed to the relationship because I discussed our shared future. Every single complaint he voiced represented aspects he had actively engaged in and fostered during our time together. Yet, the profound irony was his labeling me expensive while I had, unbeknownst to me, been underwriting his lifestyle for months. This man, who had feigned destitution and solicited emergency loans, was now portraying me as financially demanding. The cognitive dissonance was utterly bewildering. He attempted to reconstruct our entire relationship's past to vindicate his conduct. As per Trey, he had felt constrained for months but lacked the means to articulate it, believing I would have been unreceptive. When I requested concrete instances where I had refused to heed his worries, he could provide none. He merely persisted in asserting I ought to have perceived his unhappiness and that healthy partnerships should not necessitate continuous dialogue about difficulties. When I highlighted that healthy partnerships also should not demand one individual to falsify financial crises to extract funds from the other, he became irate, claiming I was employing manipulative tactics by referencing monetary support he had supposedly never requested. However, I possess screenshots of every Venmo interaction and text exchange wherein he had detailed his various pressing needs for currency. After 2 hours of this circular absurdism, I was entirely finished. I retrieved my watch, informed him I wished to never encounter him again, and began moving towards my vehicle. It was then he actually seized my arm, declaring our discussion incomplete. I turned back and informed him that if he ever again made physical contact with me without my consent, our subsequent exchange would transpire in the presence of law enforcement. He instantly retreated, profusely apologizing, claiming he was merely exasperated and intended no harm. Upon reaching home, I telephoned my parents, needing to converse with individuals who had known me longer than Trey. My mother answered, immediately sensing my distress. I recounted the entire ordeal. She listened attentively, then posed a single query. Did I genuinely believe this conduct emerged without precedent, or had there been indicators I had overlooked, swayed by my desire for the relationship to succeed? That inquiry struck me with the force of a battering ram, for honestly, there had been signs, numerous signals I had rationalized or dismissed, deeming them unworthy of contention. My father then joined the call, asking my next intended course of action. I confessed my uncertainty, admitting a part of me wished to publicly expose everything, while another simply craved moving forward and erasing this episode from memory. He reminded me that progression did not equate to condoning unacceptable behavior, and occasionally, the most effective path to closure involved ensuring the other party faced tangible repercussions for their deeds. That night, sleep eluded me as I continually reflected on another detail Gemma had shared during our Target discussion. She had mentioned Trey's conversations about his financial aspirations and his efforts to enhance his savings rate by eliminating superfluous expenses. The very man who had been soliciting emergency funds from me was apparently boasting to his new girlfriend about his fiscal prudence. Thursday morning, I awoke to 5 text messages from Trey, dispatched between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. The initial message was yet another apology for seizing my arm, asserting he never intended to cause me harm. The second offered a lengthy explanation concerning his recent stress due to professional pressures and familial expectations. The third contained his claim that he still harbored feelings for me and lamented the way events had transpired. The fourth message marked a significant turning point. He confessed the Barcelona journey had been an error, and that he had been attempting to persuade himself he felt affection for Gemma when in reality, he was simply apprehensive of commitment with me. He stated, "Witnessing your distress made him realize he had been evading something valuable rather than resolving his personal issues maturely." The fifth message proposed couples counseling or a temporary separation for individual self-improvement before we ultimately decided the fate of our relationship. This individual, who had dispatched a breakup text at 3 a.m. and immediately fled the nation with another woman, was now advocating for us to address our relationship issues. I presented the messages to Vivian, who astutely observed that each one centered solely on Trey's desires and feelings, utterly devoid of any acknowledgement of the impact his actions had on me. Even his apologies were, in essence, mere justifications cloaked in sympathetic phrasing. She inquired if I had noticed his complete failure to accept accountability for any of his decisions. Everything was framed as either an error, a misunderstanding, or a consequence of external pressures. Friday afternoon, my mother contacted me, inquiring if I had recently heard from Trey's parents. Apparently, his mother had phoned mine, seeking insight into why Trey seemed so distressed lately. His mom noted his peculiar behavior since his vacation and expressed concern. My mother, ever the diplomatic individual, simply stated that Trey and I had ended our relationship and suggested it might be best for his parents to speak with him directly about his current life circumstances. Trey's mother also mentioned their anticipation of meeting Gemma soon, as Trey had informed them he was dating a new colleague who might join them for Sunday dinner this weekend. This individual was in the process of introducing his rebound liaison to his family, while simultaneously messaging me about couples counseling and working on our relationship. I then grasped that Trey wasn't merely manipulating me. He was concurrently working multiple angles, fabricating falsehoods for everyone in his life to uphold whatever narrative served his immediate objectives. His parents believed he was happily moving on with a new partner. Gemma likely thought they were cultivating a serious connection. I was meant to assume he was confused and sought reconciliation. And his workplace was, it seemed, investigating whether his involvement with Gemma contravened company policies. However, the element that truly brought everything into sharp focus was recalling Gemma's mention of Trey discussing asking his parents for financial assistance with a security deposit for a new apartment. These were the same parents who likely had no conception that their son had been siphoning thousands of dollars from his girlfriend under false pretenses, all while planning to abandon her for someone who could bolster his career. The man had constructed a precarious edifice of lies and was desperately striving to prevent its collapse. But what he failed to recognize was my unwillingness to remain a pawn in his machinations. Sunday dinner with his parents promised to be quite illuminating, particularly since I was rather certain no one present would possess accurate information about Trey's true character. Reddit, I believe it is time for this charlatan to discover what transpires when one attempts to play chess against an opponent who has been funding one's lifestyle while practicing moves on someone else. Part 4 will undoubtedly be monumental. Final update. Reddit, I am composing this with an immense grin, for this individual received precisely what he deserved. You have all awaited this conclusion, and I assure you, it unfolded in ways I could not have orchestrated even with concerted effort. Brace yourselves, as this promises to be the most gratifying account of retribution you will encounter this year. So, on Saturday evening, I sat at home, deliberating whether to simply block this buffoon and move on, or to actively address the entirety of his fabrications. It was then Vivian phoned, bringing fresh intelligence from her friend Justin, who is employed in HR at a firm that collaborates with Trey's company. Apparently, a formal grievance had been lodged concerning an employee's breach of workplace policies regarding relationships and expense reports. Someone at Trey's place of employment had been scrutinizing his Barcelona trip and his entanglement with Gemma. This explained Trey's panic during our coffee meeting. He wasn't merely apprehensive about gossip, he was potentially facing dismissal. All his pleas about avoiding further complications for him suddenly made perfect sense. Sunday afternoon, I decided enough was truly enough. I drove to Trey's parents' residence, fully aware Gemma would be present for her grand family dinner introduction. I possessed no elaborate master plan. I simply desired for everyone to finally comprehend the truth about their cherished son's actions. His mother answered the door, appearing pleased to see me. She ushered me into the living room, where Trey was seated with Gemma, exhibiting a couple-like demeanor, while his father inquired about her profession. The expression on Trey's face upon my appearance was beyond value. Unadulterated terror mingled with fury that I had actually shown up. His parents were maintaining an air of normalcy, remarking on how pleasant it was that we could all remain amicable post-breakup. It was then I realized Trey had never informed them we had only broken up 2 weeks prior. They genuinely believed our relationship had concluded months ago, which accounted for their comfort with him introducing someone new. I took a seat and clarified to his parents that there might be some misunderstanding regarding the actual timeline of events. I elucidated that Trey had sent me a breakup text 2 weeks ago at 3 a.m. and immediately proceeded to Barcelona with Gemma. Trey began to interrupt, asserting I was confused about dates, but I produced my phone, displaying all the screenshots. The breakup text, his Instagram stories from Barcelona, him wearing my watch, the full collection. Gemma's face turned ashen as she confronted the evidence. She finally grasped that Trey had been dishonest about absolutely everything concerning our relationship's chronology. I then informed his parents about all the fictitious emergencies Trey had utilized to extort money from me. The $800 for car repairs, the $450 for bachelor party expenses, the $320 for dental work, and the $600 to aid their mortgage when his father was supposedly jobless. His father's face turned crimson, and he rose from his chair. "What in the hell are you referring to?" he thundered. "I was never between jobs. We never required assistance with our mortgage." His voice escalated with each word, and Trey visibly recoiled into the sofa. His mother inquired about dental issues, as Trey had never mentioned any to them. When I showed them the text where he solicited dental funds from me, she began shaking her head, murmuring, "This cannot be real." Gemma then revealed Trey had purchased expensive gifts for her parents the week before Barcelona, a $400 bottle of wine for her father and a designer handbag for her mother. When his mother questioned where he obtained money for such lavish gifts, considering he had just last month tearfully pleaded for $1,200 for an apartment deposit, claiming complete destitution, she began to raise her voice, demanding, "How could you deceive us in this manner?" His father was pacing the room, growing angrier by the minute. "So, you've been taking money from everyone, from us, from her, while squandering it on some girl from your office?" Trey attempted to interject, but his father decisively cut him off. "Do not dare speak right now. We instilled better values in you than this." His parents adhered to a traditional, strict upbringing, and I could clearly foresee the trajectory of this confrontation. His mother was now weeping, questioning how her son could meet her gaze and lie about needing money while simultaneously purchasing presents for another woman's family. "What kind of individual did we cultivate?" she reiterated incessantly. Trey began to panic, insisting everything was simply misunderstandings and bad timing. His father erupted. "Misunderstandings? You pilfered money from people who cherish you. That is not a misunderstanding, that is theft." Gemma sat in stunned silence, posing question after question. She was gradually connecting the dots, realizing every story he had told was inconsistent. His mother grew increasingly distraught with each feeble response. "Why did you need money for things that never transpired? Why did you not inform us you could afford costly excursions?" Her disappointment was palpable. Instead of offering an apology, this utter imbecile began to attack me for showing up and disrupting his dinner. He declared I was obsessive and incapable of accepting our breakup. His father completely lost his composure. "You believe she is the issue here? She is the only one speaking the truth." His voice was so loud I genuinely thought the neighbors might summon the authorities. "You lied to everyone in this room, and you're placing the blame on her?" His mother also rose, shouting, "I no longer even recognize you. The son I raised would not steal from his family. The son I raised would not lie about emergencies for money." Trey tried to assert it wasn't stealing because he had always planned to reimburse everyone eventually. His father was incensed. "When? When were you planning to repay us? You've been fabricating for months." Gemma directly asked him how much money he had appropriated from others to finance their relationship. Trey stammered it was complicated and emotions don't follow money rules. His mother screamed, "Cease making excuses." His parents continued their relentless questioning, their anger intensifying with each pitiful reply. His father demanded an exact accounting of how much he owed, but Trey could not provide a straightforward answer. His mother was in tears, asking if he had ever intended to tell them the truth, or simply persist in his deception indefinitely. The shouting persisted for nearly an hour. His father railed about not raising a thief. His mother wept, wondering where they had erred. Gemma inquired if anything he had told her was true, and Trey simply sat there, appearing progressively diminished as everyone understood his true nature. His mother finally instructed him to vacate their home and not return until he could look them in the eye and convey the absolute truth about his every action. His father declared they would cease providing him with any funds until he had repaid every single person he had deceived. Gemma stated she could no longer even bear to look at him and departed without a farewell. His parents instructed him to gather his belongings and leave, as they were too repulsed to have him in their house. Trey followed me outside, attempting to persuade me that I had ruined his life over money misunderstandings. I informed him his parents were correct. He was a thief who had been exposed, and now everyone was aware of his true self. Monday morning, Gemma messaged, expressing gratitude and stating she was trying to ascertain if she had spent money belonging to others. She felt profoundly unwell, realizing their entire relationship was founded on illicitly obtained funds. Tuesday, Yasmin informed me Trey had been placed on administrative leave from work, pending investigation. Policy infractions, coupled with expense report irregularities, were sufficiently grave to warrant immediate action. Wednesday, my mother called, relaying that Trey's mother had been meticulously examining bank records throughout the day. They calculated over $5,500 in unreturned loans and gifts from them, combined with nearly $3,000 he had illicitly taken from me. This individual had misappropriated close to $8,500 from those who trusted him. His parents are now consulting legal counsel regarding the recovery of their funds. They are utterly enraged, determined to ensure he faces genuine repercussions for his conduct. The desperate messages ceased. The manipulation stopped. My phone has been silent, and the sensation is liberating. Trey desired to find himself. Congratulations, my friend. You discovered precisely what transpires when you pilfer from your own family while foolishly believing yourself clever enough to evade detection. I sincerely hope that Barcelona excursion was worth sacrificing everyone who ever genuinely cared for you. Update. He relocated back to his parents' residence, unable to afford rent without employment. They are compelling him to pay rent and secure a part-time job to begin repaying everyone. His mother informed mine that they are scrutinizing every dollar he expends until he demonstrates renewed trustworthiness. The man who considered himself so ingenious is now 27 years old, residing under his parents' directives while engaged in retail work to repay the funds he purloined. His father insists on seeing receipts for all his purchases.